The Thursday, February 4th, 2016 meeting of the Water Quality Management Committee will come to order. First item on the agenda is Coonamessett Farm Foundation request for a support letter for a grant to the Cape Cod Economic Development Council. We had a presentation on this at the last meeting, and we have a discussion and vote scheduled for this meeting. Discussion.
This is a question or point of order, since I'll be abstaining from any vote on this. Is 3 enough for a quorum, or how does the quorum work?
The quorum is 4,
Right.
and we have 4.
We have 4?
But you're abstaining.
I see.
But he's present at the meeting.
I'm present at the meeting. Oh, I see. Okay, so that.
So the body can do business.
Okay, but it doesn't take 4 votes.
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, fine. Okay.
Right.
Good. I just a question. I just wasn't
Sure.
Because I'm in favor, because it's.
Well, but you're abstaining, and you're not allowed to participate in the discussion.
I'm just asking a question.
Well, the fact you're in favor,
Pardon?
we don't need to hear that you're in favor since you're not participating.
I didn't say I was in favor, I just said I was abstaining. I didn't know if it would,
Oh,
how it would.
all right,
work.
anyway.
Eric, I think what's becoming clear is that we're beginning to have a number of competing requests for the use of our coastal ponds for a variety of things. And as a town, we're going to need to think about shellfish culture, boating requests, beach rights for swimming. And it's become clear that I think we need to sit down as a town and develop a plan for how we intend to develop those ponds. I think historically, and I'm not sure I'm right, but the only grant that historically we've ever had in those southern coastal ponds is the old Sea Pit River Kelly Seafish Grant. And we're now beginning to go into an era where we're thinking about broadening that out dramatically. And so I think our harbor master and the Marine Department have put into the town meeting an article that will ask for funds to set up a global town plan of how we intend to approach the use of those water bodies. And it's my impression that before we do that, we should be cautious about jumping in with both feet and granting requests for specific allocations of those water bodies.
Every word you said, I think, is accurate. It would be probably more apropos on item 2 on the agenda, because item 1 is just a request for a support letter for the Coonamessett Farm Foundation, who was applied to the Cape Cod Economic Development Council for a grant to work on regulations, as I understand it.
But I guess what I'm saying is that I think we would be better served if we simply had the town working on a plan by itself. And then once we have that under our belts, then begin to look more broadly at how we might divide up and use those ponds in the most intelligent way possible.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would just echo your comments and also note that it seems like I've only been on this committee a short time, but we get requests for support letters continuously. And I don't know if we have, as a committee, a clear policy on that. And if we're going to not consider some, but consider others, we either need to have a policy, or maybe our policy is that we shouldn't issue support letters at all.
Well, you're right. We do not have a general policy. We've taken them as they come. I think on this one, we did find that the town has an application in to the same entity on a similar subject matter, if not close to identical subject matter. Is that correct?
Different subject matter, same funding agency, and same subject matter in the sense that it's shellfish and looking for ways to promote additional streamlining of things. So similar.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Sure,
If I'm going to comment, do I have to come up to the microphone and identify?
please.
So I'm Dan Ward, North Falmouth, and I'm not associated with this letter of support or that the Falmouth Coonamessett Farm Foundation request in any way, shape, or form. I would just like to say that I fully support the Coonamessett Farm Foundation request in the sense that it is different than other CCEDC proposals. My understanding is that the town one is more about carrying capacity and looking at interaction with different stakeholders, which is definitely very important. However, the Coonamessett Farm Foundation application is to look at the regulatory framework surrounding the municipal private-public partnership. And since no town in Massachusetts has ever done anything like this, I don't think it's as clear as maybe you would assume that it is. Since so many people are growing shellfish in Massachusetts, you would think that the steps would be very clear. And one of the main problems, which I'll get into in a minute, is the fact that half of our estuaries are conditionally approved or closed, which means you can't have any commercial aquaculture no matter what. We can vote it all up and down all day long. It will not happen. It's a state law regulation, so it cannot happen. Now, if I can't have an aquaculture farm in Green Pond, for an example, because it's conditionally approved, how is the town going to let me get in there and grow something? Is that legal? How does that work? And what if over winter, what if you do let me in there, but you say I have to move it out at 2 inches into another site? Now I have to transfer between 2 different sites which are in different growing areas? And what if there's disease in one and then I can't move it out of the farm? Is it now the town's responsibility to buy my seed because I can't have it in conditionally approved waters over 2.5 inches? How do you do that? And that is what the Coonamessett Farm Foundation is applying to research, which I think is a critical component of moving this process forward. Like you talked about, having a comprehensive plan. We can have a comprehensive plan as far as what Falmouth wants to do, but we can't have a comprehensive plan that can be acted on in terms of the state regulations until that aspect is answered.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I'm Shay Miller. I'm a researcher at the Coonamessett Farm Foundation. I guess I'd like to just clarify part of what we're looking for as far as support from Falmouth is that we feel like we're not competing with Falmouth, that we just have similar goals, that we want to improve the water quality and support the local economy and support the working waterfront that Cape Cod has. And while our ideas aren't the same as Falmouth, we feel that we're representing a section of the community that might need to be heard. And we're not asking a lot of the town of Falmouth, just to come to the table and help us develop our ideas so the towns, other Cape towns, can come to consensus and make this a viable plan. I've kind of outlined like what we would expect the town of Falmouth to be obligated for. It's just not much. It's just merely to lend it some of its expertise. I have these template letters of support if you guys would like to look at these.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Do you have a sense of what this grant could do for this committee? For example, would you propose to come back if the funding were awarded from time to time and share with us the results of your study?
Absolutely. We would actually not prefer to have to come back, but work side by side, have a lot of input from everyone. We've reached out to other towns as well. We're interested in kind of learning from what a lot of the other towns have done. All the communities here, manage their shellfish differently. They got their own needs, they got their own problems, and we kind of want to see if we can develop our ideas, something that's viable, learn from the experience from other towns, and make it a good plan, an option for all of the Cape Cod communities.
No. Okay.
Answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Hi, Douglas Brown. So I'm actually the planning board rep to the Coastal Pond Management Committee, and I'm sure you know George Hampson passed recently, and he was our chairman. So the Coastal Pond Management Committee right now is in flux. We're looking for new leadership and new membership, and that should probably come together this spring. And I think the Coastal Pond Management Committee would maybe want to have this sort of management aspect to this pond aquaculture as well, so I think that would be important. And also personally, not related to the committee, but my own personal feeling was I was very excited about the fact that the ability to non-specifically locate these grants so that they could plant the clams underneath it and then move the beds and harvest the clams and have a cyclical, more profitable, and sounded like a great idea. So if you guys could consider supporting the idea separately from actually awarding a grant, maybe that would be helpful. So, thank you.
Any other public comments? Committee comments?
I'll make a comment. I'm Scott Lindell. I lead an aquaculture program at the MBL. I'm also a consultant to Dennis, who's facing this very same question, and I think a lot of towns are. Falmouth has been a leader in leading the way in this shellfish aquaculture for bioremediation. And I just want to point out that whatever you do is going to be an example for others to follow as well. And maybe this is a regional problem. I think Doug's suggestion of getting other committees certainly in town involved, but perhaps we need a Cape-wide, maybe the Cape Cod Commission can put some of their expertise to this as well. And certainly, if we're looking for funding to support this, I think we shouldn't leave any stone unturned, because it is going to be a wrestle with both local and state authorities to get this kind of permits and grand, if you will, site planning in place so that it benefits the towns, benefits the economies, and is sustainable for both tourism and residential living alike.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or observations from the public? Any from the committee? Virginia?
I'm sorry, I was a little late. I had an unavoidable conflict. And I don't know whether there's been discussion amongst the committee yet about this. I had several thoughts sort of before coming here and before hearing your presentation about what you're looking for and before seeing this draft. I think it is really good that this town has commercial interests that are looking ahead to maximizing ways to earn money in the estuaries. I was just wondering whether this proposal, with its setting up of the way the permitting would be done, whether the proposal was premature. And my reason for that was that the Department of Marine and Environmental Services is already engaged in doing a lot of baseline work and sort of feasibility, looking at these various estuaries. And so I thought it was significant that they did not feel that they should support this grant at this time. And so I think that is a factor in my thinking. My second thought is that it's always good to look forward. It's always good to create different scenarios, and there's no question that the licensing for any kind of commercial operation is very complicated. So if ultimately we get to a point where it's somewhat simplified, that's good. We need to be careful that there may be goals that do not exactly overlap. I expect that the commercial interests will want to maximize revenue. What the town wants to maximize is nitrogen removal. That we are trying to avoid building vastly more expensive sewers. And so that's going to be our goal, and those two may not exactly overlap. And then my last thought is that when we do actually agree to have some commercial operation in a particular piece of the town's water real estate, that in itself, to some degree, reduces the flexibility of the town. If it turns out that we need to be doing something slightly different because we've already said, okay, this acreage has been allocated to this particular commercial operation, we then have to go back and renegotiate. If it's not recognized ahead of time that the town at this point needs flexibility in developing its plans. So I really have mixed feelings about how to work with obviously a forward-looking group, and I think that's a real plus. And at the same time, not at this point limit the town in the flexibility that it needs to develop the plans for these estuaries. So those are the various thoughts that went through my head as I read Mr. Smolowitz's proposal. And I'm going to read this letter again now that I've got it.
I'd just like to say, we've been all over the waterfront briefly here in terms of the different interests and goals and that, and there's a multiplicity of them, and we all know that. What's before us here is a much smaller piece of the puzzle, which is there are two applications proposed that are in fact going to the Cape Cod Economic Development Council for funding. One is coming from the town of Falmouth, and one is coming from the Coonamessett Farm Foundation. The one that the town of Falmouth has submitted comes from the town itself, and this one is from a private entity. The town itself, through the Marine and Environmental Services, has declined to support this for its own good reasons. My good reason would be very simple. There's only a very small pot of money available from the Cape Cod Economic Development Council. And to the extent we encourage them to give money to this entity, we will lessen the chances that the town's own application will be funded. And from a very focused point of view, that's why I'm not supporting it. With that, do I have a motion at all? Hearing no motion, we can hardly take a vote.
I mean, I would make a motion to support writing a letter of recommendation for the group. I don't personally see any harm in doing so. Let the
We have a motion.
proposal,
Is there a second?
process play out.
All right, failing a second, it's off the table. Next item, Daniel Ward, request for support letter for a 5-acre shellfish grant in Bourne's Pond.
So we're using the word,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it is. You can give me that. Thank you.
so we're using the word grant in a couple different ways here.
Yes, yeah,
So
definitely.
this is not grant money, this is grant like a lease site. So I came before,
Microphone.
Oh, absolutely. That's portable.
okay. All right. Is there there's no button or anything, so I'll just hang out over here.
You don't have to. There
She'll
is a
do that.
button. This is a clicker. It goes forward. This one goes forward and this is back. So you can stand
All
up
right,
there.
even better. Okay, so I came before this committee in August, and I said that I wanted to start an aquaculture farm, a commercial aquaculture farm in Bourne's Pond. And at that point, the committee was overwhelmingly positive about it, but I didn't really have any details. The reason why I came was kind of to gauge interest, and it seemed like, potentially a good idea. So I put together a proposal, and so I thought it was appropriate to come back before this committee, before I do anything else, to hopefully get a letter of support and gauge interest and potential for the project moving forward. So right now, I have a 10-acre site in Megansett. So our company is called Ward Aqua Farms LLC. We grow oysters, scallops, kelp. We're not growing kelp this year, but we have in the past. We may again. We also grow quahogs, but primarily oysters and scallops. The farm that I would like to go for in Bourne's Pond is a 5-acre farm. So the regulations in Falmouth stipulate 5 acres in inshore waters, of which 3 can be used for the first 5 years and 2 to be held in reserve that can be expanded to after the first 5 years. So A, B, C, D, the orange box is the southern 3 acres that I would utilize first, and then the entire orange and yellow boxes together would be the entire 5-acre parcel that would be expanded into. So I submitted a fairly comprehensive proposal to the committee, and I'll just go into a few of the points about why this particular spot is advantageous to commercial aquaculture. So the first reason is for shellfish growing areas. So like I said when I was commenting on the Coonamessett Farm Foundation proposal, in order to do commercial aquaculture, it has to be an approved growing area. So as far as the south-facing estuaries, Little Pond is closed to all shellfishing. Falmouth Harbor is closed to all shellfishing. So really what you're down to is Great Pond and Green Pond, Bourne's Pond, Eel Pond, and Wacoit. Great Pond and Green Pond are conditionally approved, so there's no permitted aquaculture for commercial purposes. The town can propagate as much as they want, and there's all kinds of propagation work in those areas, but not for commercial aquaculture. Wacoit Bay is also part of the federal National Estuarine Research Reserve, so there's no commercial aquaculture activities in there under any circumstances. So that leaves us down to Bourne Pond and the Eel River. Those are the only 2 estuaries that are south-facing that even can be permitted for aquaculture, even if all the other aspects are favorable. So there's only really 2 ponds we're talking about. Now, as far as navigation, Eel Pond has significant boat traffic and significant mooring fields, and I don't see any circumstance under which the harbor master would ever allow commercial aquaculture in any type of gear other than bottom planting to exist in those areas. There's too much activity. So really, we're down to Bourne's Pond. That's the only one that can really have commercial aquaculture at this time. Bourne's Pond has very low boat traffic because of the bridge and very few moorings, so it's ideal in terms of lessening stakeholder impacts. So if we're only talking about Bourne's Pond, because that's really the only one that is even in the running for commercial aquaculture, you have to look at the biological aspect. And so in the southern 2/3 of Bourne's Pond, there's significant eelgrass. And when there's eelgrass, one of the first steps after getting the Board of Selectmen to approve it is to go to the Division of Marine Fisheries and then come out and do a biological survey. If there's any eelgrass, even a single blade found on the entire site, you don't get it. So the bottom 2/3 of Bourne Pond has eelgrass in it, so there's no commercial aquaculture in there. So now we're whittling down all of the estuaries, so there's 1/3 of one estuary that's even possible to have commercial aquaculture. In that top third, I did a series of, I don't know, half a dozen dives. In the 5-acre parcel that I'm applying for, there's no eelgrass in the entire thing and no shellfish in the entire thing. It's got this deep, silty, anoxic muck on the bottom. There's no soft-shell clams, there's no mussels, there's no oysters, there's no bay scallops, and the only cohogs there are there's a handful of big ones, like this size, that obviously have been planted many, many years ago and shows a complete lack of recruitment of juveniles to that area because of the anoxic mud, which is unable to support life in the juvenile stage. So what that signifies to me is that there's a handful of large cohog, which falls far below the standard set of 3 per square meter of the Division of Marine Fisheries, and that also signifies a pretty hostile environment to any kind of recruitment of natural set. So as far as depth, another thing you want to look for when you're starting a commercial site is good depth for overwintering. So we get ice in all of these areas, so you have to sink your gear down to the bottom so that the ice doesn't damage your gear and kill everything. Even though Great Pond and Green Pond are closed to commercial aquaculture, they still are too shallow to support any kind of commercial aquaculture. So even if we can get over this whole permitting process, there's still no way that there's going to be commercial aquaculture in there unless it's bottom planted, and all the places in those 2 areas that are able to be bottom planted already have significant shellfish populations and therefore would be prohibited from the biological survey by the Division of Marine Fisheries. The only area where there is sufficient depth is in the northern third of Bourne's Pond. In the southern portion, there isn't sufficient depth to be able to sink the gear over winter. It's only in the upper section, and that upper section that I chose is 6-foot average depth of mean low water, which is sufficient for overwintering the gear. North of that, you could do it, but it's almost fresh water. Nothing's going to grow there. And south of there, it's too shallow, and there's eelgrass. So really, it's a very, very small piece where you could do this. And the bottom's muddy, like I was saying. It's this anoxic silt, so nothing's going to grow there anyways. So you grow it in gear on the surface. And the last thing, I know one of the things that Falmouth is looking at with their proposed project is neighbor interactions and that type of thing. And I just want to point out that black box is where the proposed site is, and this is off the Falmouth GIS website, a screenshot from the Falmouth GIS website. If you notice, to the right of the site, there's no developed parcels at all. It's completely undeveloped, and 35% of the land to the east of the site is owned by the Falmouth Conservation Commission, so there is not going to be development in that area anyways, so there's not going to be any stakeholders to complain about views or anything like that. If you notice to the west of the site, there's only 4 parcels that have a house on it. So this is the lowest density of abutters in all of the south-facing salt ponds, all of the estuaries. So if there's an area where you want to have commercial aquaculture where it would have the least impact on any stakeholders, this is where you want it to be. Additionally, one of the questions that I had last time was about access and how you're going to get in. If the bridge is so low, how am I going to get in? What's nice is this, right here, this is Pacheco Path, which runs through Falmouth Conservation land, and it's a public access point for shellfishing. So when you go down to the end of that, it's a dirt road that ends at Bourne's Pond, and there's boats, little skiffs down there that are moored year-round from commercial shellfishermen in town, which get to that point and go south where there's significant resources. So it's already utilized for commercial shellfishing, so I can't, and it's town-owned, so I mean, that's perfect. So it's a decent area to have a commercial farm. As far as ecosystem services, I don't think I need to tell anyone in this room about the impact of shellfish on nitrogen and cleaning up the waters. I think we're all well versed in that. I just want to explain the difference between a commercial operation or a town municipal propagation project, in that a market-sized 3-inch oyster can remove far more nitrogen than a smaller oyster, and it's only commercial growers that are allowed to handle and possess 3-inch market-sized oysters. Municipalities have to get rid of their shellfish before it reaches that size and bottom plant it, or it becomes what's called an attractive nuisance by the Division of Marine Fisheries. So if you're going to be selling out of the impaired water body and not moving it to another water body, such as West Falmouth or Megansett or Quisset, before it's reached 3-inch size so you can sell it, it's a commercial operation that would be doing that. Additionally, I have the amount of kilograms per nitrogen that's removed for each acreage, but I think that's fairly straightforward, and we've been over that in the past. So we're looking at 200 kilograms per year on the 5 acres once it's fully built out, which doesn't include any kind of additional nitrogen removal for sedimentation and off-gassing and that type of thing. So the build-out plan that I propose is to start small, to figure out the correct stocking densities, to figure out stakeholder involvement, and to figure out survival, and if it's a viable area to be doing shellfish. So in the same way that the town is figuring out some of those things, a commercial operation is going to do things differently. So even if the town finds great survival and growth and all these other things, I'm not going to do it the same way the town does. So I need to figure out my own survival. I'm coming with seed from a different area, from a different hatchery, grown in a different upweller, harvesting at a different size. So it's really, it's important for the commercial grower that's going to be doing it to be doing their own range finding and viability tests themselves. And so the last comparison I just would like to make is the discussion that kind of started in terms of commercial aquaculture or weighting and evaluating. I think I went pretty in depth into the fact that there's really nowhere else in the estuaries where this can happen other than the site that I proposed. It can't happen in any of these other estuaries. So I think the town's program of evaluating viability and carrying capacities and that type of thing is really interesting and it's really good. But Bourne's Pond is already open. We should do it, commercial aquaculture. The questions that need to be answered are in Green Pond, in Great Pond, and Eel Pond. How are you going to promote aquaculture to clean up the waters in an area with high traffic? How are you going to promote aquaculture in areas that aren't open to commercial aquaculture legally by state standards? Those are questions that need to be answered, and those are things that need to be found out. What do you do if there's disease in Green Pond and you have a commercial farm in there and they can't move their seed out? What if you can't bottom plant it? Can you bottom plant it? How does it grow? What densities? That's information that needs to be found out for the conditionally approved and the closed waters like Little Pond. Bourne Pond's already open, you know, and there's only one section in Bourne Pond that is even possible to do commercial aquaculture. So I don't think that having a commercial farm at the small size of 5 acres or 3 acres really precludes additional research and investigation by the town into other opportunities as far as shellfish for remediation purposes. Of all the acres, so I can't go into Great or Green, I can go into Bourne's, I can't really go into the Eel River, I definitely can't go into McCoy, and I can't go into Little. But Little's close, so if we don't count that one, The rest of the estuaries add up to 1,840 acres that the town has access to for propagation purposes and for cleaning up the watershed, but I don't have access to because of all the other reasons I listed earlier. So my 5 acres is less than 0.5% of the acreage that's available to the town for this purpose. And if you're talking about less than 0.5% of the available acreage and a problem this vast, I don't know. I don't see any reason why the town and commercial couldn't operate at the exact same time. And I know one of the other aspects that the town is looking into is carrying capacity of a given water body. And even if it was a clean estuary, which is not, a clean ecosystem, that could support millions of shellfish every year commercially. However, Bourne's Pond is not a healthy estuary. It's heavily polluted. So if we're talking a heavily polluted estuary with 6,700 kilos of excess nitrogen in Bourne's Pond, that equates to 64 million oysters that would need to be grown just to bring it down to 0. In the entire Cape Cod in 2015, which, it's been growing, oyster aquaculture is growing year after year for decades now. It's a big industry in Cape Cod. The total production in 2015 was 11.1 million oysters. So I find it hard to believe that we're going to turn Bourne's Pond into 6 times the entire output of the Cape Cod. It's just not going to happen. And even if you say that half, all right, so you don't want to attenuate all of it with shellfish. Half of it's going to be attenuated through the inlet widening, okay. And even if you want to say another half is going to be attenuated through sedimentation and off-gassing and a healthy estuary, that's still, so even if we're only talking about cleaning up 25% of the nitrogen, the excess nitrogen in the estuary, that's still 8.4 million oysters, or 75% the entire output of Cape Cod. That's not going to happen either. So while I applaud the town's efforts into researching this aspect, I don't see any reason for that project to preclude my site. That's it.
Thank you, thank you. That was very good. Thank you. Comments, questions?
Can I make some points of clarification?
Yeah.
Points of clarification?
Just a point, I read the proposal, well written. There were a few inconsistencies with what the facts are.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share those. Falmouth grows 2 million oysters in 1,200 bags in Little Pond, not 300,000, because they don't all get to be 2 inches. So in that report that you cited, that was sort of a planning number for if all of them were 2 inches, and they're not. So we've counted year after year, and what we find is our 2 million oysters fit in about 1,200 bags, and that's different stocking densities and different size classes. So not the I think you said 300, and that's not accurate. The other thing that the town can do is we can hold our oysters till they're 2 inches, and then we can bottom plant them, and that's exactly what we do. So we can, in a place like Bourne's Pond or in other ponds that are conditionally open, plant on the bottom to 3 inches. So the town can hold, quote unquote, oysters till they're 3 inches. And what we do, and we've been doing for 3 years, is have them in either Wacoit, or we did it in Quissit, or we do it in Green Pond. And those areas are cordoned off and they're closed, and then they open when the season opens after they've gone through a depuration cycle. So to say that the town can't hold oysters, they can't grow them more than 2 years, that's not really accurate. We do grow them to 3 inches.
Well, I mean, yeah, the town would have to, right? Otherwise, how would any recreational person harvest 3 inches?
That's exactly right. So we do grow them to 3 inches.
My point was more about the impaired estuaries, that you couldn't keep it in Bourne's Pond in gear until 3 inches. You'd have to bottom
We would
plant
bottom plant them, and that's sort of the point that I'm trying to make, that we do this, and we do it by bottom planting, not by keeping it in gear. The third is that those kilogram numbers are the source load. From a planning perspective, what the committee does is looks at the reduction target, and they're different numbers. And so for Bourne's Pond, the number is not 6,700 kilograms, it's 4,400 kilograms, or 4,000 kilograms. This was 2 weeks ago presentation. So the amount of nitrogen that the town has to keep or remove from Bourne's Pond is 4,000 kilograms. And so the inlet does 2,000 kilograms, and what we've been talking about is getting 2,000 kilograms from about 6 million oysters, plus or minus. These are the planning numbers. So that 67 is not the correct target for what we'd be even trying to do with oysters, and that's true of the other water bodies. And So I think those are just, I just wanted to clarify that those are those are our real planning numbers.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, it's great. I think the point still holds, 4,000 kilos, 6 million or 8 million, it's still, you're talking 50% of the entire Cape's output out of one pond. I think it's unlikely. And unless you have a commercial farm, who's harvesting 6 million oysters, you know?
Well, we had also talked about Bourne's Pond is very popular for cohogs, and so the idea is actually not all oysters. It's maybe 60-40 or 50-50, and bottom planting cohogs where they are absolutely going to be harvested.
3 million? All right.
Yeah, this does not have to turn into a debate.
Yeah, I'm just
Well, the kind of work you have done is really useful, and it's sort of in parallel with the kind of work we have done.
Yeah.
But it's not the same because we haven't talked enough, frankly. And I think an hour sitting down, going through everybody's assumptions, we might actually come up with a set that we all were on the same page of. It's not that far off. It's just sometimes you don't know what came before here, and we don't know where you've been going. I have a couple of questions. One that John raised at the beginning here, that he wasn't aware of any other estuaries grants except for Owen Cowie's. Are you?
That's it, no. That's the
Okay,
only one.
so there have been no others in any of the 15 estuaries?
Not since 18 whatever. And
Gotcha.
that was yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And by your own admission, there's only one section of this body that's particularly appropriate for this purpose, and you've laid out why that section is the one, and you did a very good job of that. You may not be familiar, well, why would you be, with the notice of project change that the committee's been working very hard on, and the selectmen just adopted, and has gone up to Boston for approval as part of the Bourne's Pond Inlet Opening Project. In that, the state said, how are you going to bring the level of nitrogen down to acceptable levels in that pond? And they know we're going to do the inlet opening because we said so. They wanted to hear, how are you going to get the rest of it down? Because the inlet opening doesn't do it all. And so the town sent them a detailed explanation answering that question. And one of the answers was permeable reactive barrier in Fisherman's Cove, which is underway, and the other involved shellfish. Now, the shellfish were presumed to remove a certain quantity. The town, if that plan goes forward, the town will be required to remove that much using shellfish. So to give away the best spot to a commercial guy who may or may not be removing as much nitrogen as the town is required to remove could be a problem. Now, to make it even worse, some people on the committee think that we shouldn't open the inlet at all, that we should just grow even more shellfish, and we should grow them to 3.5 inches. Now,
Okay.
3 inches.
if either, well, I heard 3.5, Mashpee was doing 3.5, I think you thought they were doing the right thing.
No, I just said they're doing that. I said they were doing that, Eric.
And he
that,
used Falmouth.
It was 3 inches here. That's what we were basing on our own experience.
In any event, the reliance of others, if we didn't open the inlet, would be even more shellfish removing even more nitrogen, which would be even harder to accomplish if the best shellfish growing area had been given away to a private grower. Now, just to bring you back into where this can work, the town is not. This is not one of these things where let's have a plan sometime later. We have to have a plan real soon, because there's people up in Boston expect real numbers and a real plan to grow real shellfish in that water body. I am convinced that private growers are going to have to be part of that. The town is not good at a lot of things, and that growing shellfish in that quantity over a sustained period of time may not be something the town itself is good at. I think they're going to have to rely on a public-private partnership of some kind to either, where the town would maybe grow them and the private people would take them out and sell them. I mean, there's going to be some combination of forces here. You can't expect 2.5 people at the Department of Marine and Environmental Services to do this. So I think private is going to be a big part of the mix, and what that mix looks like is what the town's going to figure out this year. It's not some obscure time frame. It's this year. We've got to come up with real numbers that show how we're gonna get nitrogen out using shellfish in that water body. So you're here at the right time. You may not be here at the right time to walk away with the 5 acres for yourself, but you will be here at the right time to be part of the plan that the town comes up with in Boyne's Pond
Great,
to remove nitrogen.
great.
Comments or questions from others?
Yeah, I just wanted to make, again, thanks, Dan, that was good in terms of particularly your interest in the area as well as the benefits to the community. I think that there are, as Eric mentioned, there are many modalities we could look at in terms of how this is done that would incorporate the experience with the oysters that the town has been working with, as well as the prior many decades quahog program. Okay, so it can be, as Sia mentioned, we can do both, but it may very well be that it could be in the end, we do both, even in the same area, where you would be using the surface water for oyster culture, for example, and under that would be, the town would be seeding, as it has been, quahogs. So it's like a multi-dimensional kind of thing. I mean, that would be one possibility of a public-private arrangement to an extent. And then looking at other factors that could be involved with how the quahogs might be seeded. So that is one type. Then there is, of course, what we've been doing, which is growing the seed in Little Pond and then bottom planting for recreational and commercial uptake. But as Eric has said, this is the efficiency and the economic viability of pursuing that to a large extent. I mean, it may be possible because it might be a lot cheaper than doing any other water quality attenuation project. So it may be that it's well worth it even bringing in more staff to do that.
Yeah.
Plus the economic returns that come from it. So there are lots of different things. I mean, there is, several modalities that could be involved, including what you're proposing. But again, we want to get, if you're coming to this committee, our interest area in particular is sustained water quality improvement in these estuaries. That's really what we're after. And to do it in the least cost manner. And so shellfish clearly is one of those options that looks very good. So I think that there, things are not quite settled yet, but there may be some things can be tested as we move forward, even toward a kind of a full-scale expansion of the Little Pond pilot test. But this will be discussed over the next weeks and maybe months. But that's the way I see it. I see that there's a lot. But yeah, but then to set aside 5 acres for one individual is maybe something that would need to be looked at.
I would just, I agree, I get it, yep.
Yeah.
I would just point to the acreage of each one of these, and that Bourne's Pond's not the problem. Green Pond and Great Pond and Little, and they're all the problem, So if we're talking about 6 million shellfish in Bourne's Pond, that's great. It's gonna have to be another 6 in Green, it's gonna have to be another 6 in Great, and now you're talking about more production than the entire state of Massachusetts, So in order to do that, is there gonna be a public-private partnership? Yeah. Is it gonna be bottom planting with oysters on top? Probably. Is it gonna be kelp and seaweed in there? Whatever, But less than 0.5% of an area which can't be bottom planted, which is what the town does, I don't think that necessarily interferes with anything the town is trying to do. And when you state it as the best spot, it is in no way, shape, or form, it's the worst spot. It is the worst spot because commercial aquaculture farmers are the stakeholder of last resort. So if boaters use it, you don't get it. If there's shellfish there, you don't get it. If there's ecosystem services, you don't get it. If there's moorings, you don't get it. The only way I get it, if there's nothing else that anybody can use it for, which is why I'm looking at that spot. I'd love to be able to bottom plant, but all the places where you can bottom plant already has shellfish. I'd love to be able to go in an area where I don't need gear, and I can grow it to 2 inches like the town and throw it on the bottom. But those areas in town don't exist. So those are the good areas, and those exist in Great Pond and Green Pond and LaCoy in south of where I'm going for in Bournes. And those are all excellent areas to explore this 6 million shellfish per pond idea. My 5-acre piece is not an excellent area, and it's not an area the town could even use for bottom planting. So I just don't see the conflict. That's all.
Just one other thing. A few years ago, Doug is here from the Coastal Pond Committee, and I went to a number of their meetings at that time to talk about this option of expanding shellfish in Green Pond, which is what they were focusing on at that time. And also spoke with Greg Frazier about the mooring issue, basically. And the way it looks, even with the Little Pond project, we initially thought, well, it can't be done. But in the end, it happened, okay? So in looking at those factors, okay, in terms of the use of the areas and things, especially in the mooring fields can be consolidated more a bit. People don't have to necessarily go, a couple miles to get to their boat, but they could be consolidated. Areas could be defined that are suitable, and this can then be kind of worked out again through a planning process that involves the moorings as well as identifying bottom, and then the seasonal harvesting issue, which is what we're up against even in West Falmouth Harbor and Green Pond at this point, because it's closed during the 6 months of the year.
What commercial operation is going to want to go in there? Not to mention, the Division of Marine Fisheries, the head of Division of Marine Fisheries told me that under no circumstances will I ever have a lease permitted in a conditionally approved area. Under no circumstances. So even if you tighten up those moorings, I still can't get it.
Yeah, I was agreeing with Ron quite a lot today until he started talking about consolidated moorings. I do not want to be on the committee that is in charge of trying to do that.
What I mean is that if you go
I'm not even putting it in
if you
minutes.
look at, if you look at these mooring fields, okay,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes they're really spread out, so they may not be as compact. And
Oh,
then,
I
and then the
understand.
whole idea of using helical moorings so that we don't wreck the bottom so much would even make it more possible to get closer. I know your mooring is safer.
I'm glad to say we have another committee that's in charge of this.
We're not gonna mess with your mooring, not yet.
Eric, I think this is all the more reason that we need as a town to think about this global plan of how we're going to use things. One of the things which we're particularly interested in thinking about shellfish is reestablishing long-term reef sites. So set aside areas which would never be harvested, where we could establish reefs the way we had historically and use them as biofilters. And so that, again, is part of, you clearly don't want reefs in areas where people want to swim. And so the town needs to sit down and figure out in a systematic way how we want to develop all of those coastal ponds and what the competing interests are, and how do we meet the needs of each competing interest as we develop that plan. I think it's not going to be a trivial thing to come up with that plan, and it's going to be the kind of thing that's going to have to go through half the committees in town before it gets put together. But I think it's something we need to have high on our agenda and be working really diligently toward. And clearly there's going to be a component for the type of project which you are proposing. But I think until we know a little better what's available to us and what the options are, and have a back and forth with the state about what they're going to let us do. I mean, at the moment, there aren't rules about setting aside reef areas that would be permanent. And that's something which is really critical to part of what we're thinking about. And so that's, I think, all part of this plan.
Reefs are part of this cleaning up the water plan?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
I just want to add a couple of things. So you end with the commercial now or keep waiting. And so I hope from this conversation you've gathered that it's really commercial now or commercial soon or coming up, but it's not waiting. We're very actively pursuing pieces of this picture.
I came to Chuck in 2010 to try to get my site in there instead of Megansett, and that's when I started this conversation. So 6 years later, I have to say, it's not moving enough.
Okay, it's not moving fast enough. Fair enough. We often feel the same way.
If it makes you feel better, the town has a deadline of early 2019.
19?
December 2019.
That's 3 years from now. At which time, we have to have a plan for all the south-facing estuaries that shows the DEP and the EPA how we're going to get the nitrogen down to acceptable levels
In each estuary.
in each estuary. And we're working so that within the next couple of years, we will have penciled out the answers to that. And the answer in every estuary is going to involve shellfish propagation.
Well, if the town is developing a plan, and the plan is to include commercial aquaculture, does it make sense to include commercial aquaculture in the development of that plan? In the sense that instead of just having the town growing some shellfish in bags the way municipalities do it, have a commercial operation that you can be collecting density data, you can be collecting growth rates, you can be collecting nitrogen content, you can be collecting water clarity, all this data at a commercial farm in the water body, so that when you put in this proposal, you're not basing off municipality numbers, you're basing it off actual commercial numbers, so you know what the actual commercial value would be of a farm in an estuary.
Well, I just wanted you to say that, but the monitoring would be
I
under
do all that at my site
under
anyways.
your program,
Yeah,
or it
I
would
already
be?
do all that at my site, yeah. Not the nitrogen, but everything else.
Oh, not the, okay.
I do
but-
DO, salinity, temperature, growth rates, survival, density.
We have monitoring stations in every one of these water bodies with SMAS,
Oh, it's
who
monitored.
have been in place for many years that do include nitrogen and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the monitoring is not the issue. A plan that gets your numbers down to an acceptable level is the issue. And
I just think basing off municipality numbers instead of actual commercial numbers is going to lead to overcompensate, is going to lead to under
Right.
quantifying the actual amount of shellfish that's needed. Because what's possible and what actually happens are two different things.
truer words are never spoken. You've brought up a lot of good points today. I hope that our dialogue's been useful, but
Yeah.
we need to have more one-on-one with you, settling the kind of numbers so we're all on the same sheet. And
I can't settle
and
anything
your
until I
ideas
do
about
it.
how to involve the private entities are progressive and useful. And
I can't, there's nothing I can do until I try it. Until I put shellfish in there and grow them, I can't collaborate. I can't say any numbers are right or wrong or yes or no. I mean, until you do it.
Just a couple of stray things. In your proposal, you said oysters, scallops, and quahogs, and I wondered how you thought you were going to do scallops in this 5-acre area.
Floating bags and floating cages. Same way, it's the exact same way I do oysters.
And you would raise them to marketable size in a floating bag?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ideally.
Ideally, okay, I just, okay, I've not seen any data as to how much nitrogen they remove, so I don't know, we have
They
data
do
on.
better than oysters on a size basis, actually.
Okay,
They grow a lot quicker to a much bigger size, so I would assume, but I don't have that data, so.
They do.
and then the second thing is I just think we need to say that if the town ultimately decides to establish a grant area, it has to go out like a request for proposals. So it's not just whoever walks through the door with a plan gets it. There has to be a level playing field. So when the town ultimately reaches the point of leasing, licensing a particular piece of real estate, there is a legal process. And since that hasn't been mentioned in any conversation, just wanted to make you aware of it.
Do you know, I mean, maybe you do know, but do you know how 7 out of the 7 grants were established in Falmouth? All 7 of them?
On the outside of the town.
And Kelly's?
No, Kelly's, when it came up when Olin Kelly finally closed his business, they went out for proposals. They had a proposal from the Wampanoag, there was another company, and then the company that got it.
But that's to take an existing grant and
That's
transfer
right.
ownership. The initiating the other 6 grants and the Kelly grant, I'm assuming back in the 1800s, it is the first one through the door. That's how it works in Falmouth. It's different in other towns, but that's how I got my 10 acres. That's how all the other ones got theirs.
I understand, I'm just letting you,
So you think that in the future
Okay.
it won't be that way?
I think if the town decides to carve out pieces of water real estate for commercial growing, that it will be done through a public process.
anyway, this has been really useful, and we're getting down to the weeds now.
Yeah.
But don't be a stranger. I think
No.
and I don't mean coming here and making a presentation. you know, let's sit down with, you know, we have a subcommittee or a working group that deals with shellfish.
Yeah.
Let's sit down with them and you and kind of hash out some of these things so that we're all talking about the same thing and
Sure.
take the benefit of your input.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be right there.
Okay. Next item, review of Green Pond MEP report. For the benefit of the nationwide television audience and the small in-house audience, the committee's been going to each estuary in town and doing sort of a back-of-the-envelope sketch or a thumbnail sketch of what its problems are, what's causing them, and what are the most profitable, likely ways to reduce nitrogen in that particular water body. Every one of them is different. So the star of the show today is Green Pond.
And this is our last estuary. We started,
Except for Waquaque Bay.
well, I was gonna say, we started in Magansett. We went all the way down the west coast, went all the way across. We took a couple out of order, but after today, all we have is Waquaque. And when you say all you have is Waquaque, that's quite
Okay.
a lot to have.
The 800-pound gorilla, right?
Right, but let me grab these. And so today we're talking about Green Pond. Going through this was very interesting. Green Pond, here's an aerial view. We've got Acapesket coming down one side and Davisville Road coming down the other. So just to give us a context of Green Pond. One of the things that's unique about Green Pond, so as we go through these, this is one of the submerged valleys on the south coast of Falmouth. And one of the things that's different about Green Pond than both Bourne and Great, which we've looked at in recent past weeks, is Mill Pond. And so Mill Pond was man-made. It was dammed. Part of the stream was dammed. And it was dammed a long time ago. So a map of 1880 shows this pond actually in Falmouth. And one of the things that's stunning about what Mill Pond does is how much nitrate it removes. Now, as we all know, nitrogen is, we think of things in terms of total nitrogen, but the nitrogen fractions are actually significantly different in how they interact with the ecosystem, and the nitrate and nitrate, which is a major part of the biological bioavailable fraction, is attenuated. And you can see that from the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report. We've seen this before when we've looked at Bourne's Pond. I really wish Steve were here. Steve is very interested in these streams. Bourne's Brook, Bacchus Brook, and Coonamessett River, we've looked at this. If you look here, this says nitrate plus nitrate as a percent of the total nitrogen. And it's 62% in Bourne's, and it's 66% in Coonamessett. But because of Mill Pond, it's only 12% in Bacchus Brook. And I think that's as we go through these reports, what I try to do is pull out the sort of interesting facts that we can maybe camp on to think about action items and strategies for removing nitrogen. And I thought the pond at the top of the estuary is very important. So that's that. What we know about Green Pond, we know from a lot of monitoring stations. And this is just a picture to remind us that when the MEP report was done, they took water samples and continue to take water samples at all of these stations, G1 through G5 and G2A, and they're for good measure. And we do the complete suite of nitrogen parameters, as well as dissolved oxygen, salinity, chlorophyll, phosphorus, you name it, we monitor it. And so we get a really good picture, sort of a fairly good spatial resolution picture of the water quality over time in Green Pond and all our other ponds. And what we're really looking to do from a management perspective is change the nitrogen concentration at the Sentinel station. It wants to be lower than 4, and right now it's a little bit higher than 5. This is a screenshot from Watershed MVP, and I present it because it's also something sort of similar in many of our south-facing estuaries. There's a significant amount of development. There's 28. Significant amount of residential development and a little bit of commercial south of 28, a little bit as you're heading north. But here's the other, this is 28 again, so you guys are comfortable with. So this is Route 28. You can't see the south, I just broke it in half. But the northern part of the watershed is really quite the nitrogen contribution is significantly lower, and you can see that very graphically just by looking at the left and the right side, right? So what we try to do here, and this is, Dan, what I was describing in terms of our nitrogen, the load is one thing, the removal load is another thing, and the way we get to that number is looking at this table 8 in every estuaries report that tells us what the present load is from a lot of land use analyses and actually looking at the stream contributions and whatnot, and then using a very robust model to say what do we want to get to in terms of a load that will get us the nitrogen concentration in the water that we care about. So it's simple arithmetic, and in this particular case, Green Pond needs to have 4,453 kilograms removed to achieve the water quality concentration that would ostensibly bring back eelgrass. And that's sort of the goal. So we like to use round numbers, so we're going to call it, 4,500. And where does it come from? It comes from predominantly septic systems, as it usually does. This is the overall load, and I'm going to focus on the controllable load because that's what we do. 85% of it's from septic systems, 7% is from fertilizer, and 8% is from stormwater. So we've got our work cut out for us. When we get into how are we going to approach nitrogen removal, the reason we care about stormwater and fertilizer is because by the 208 plan, there's a credit that we can take if we've done certain things. Falmouth has a very aggressive fertilizer bylaw. We prohibit, for our national viewing audience, it's good to know, if you're within 100 feet of a coastal pond, you are prohibited from applying nitrogen fertilizer in any way, shape, or form. Slow release, quick release, you cannot do it. And we send a letter out every year to everyone around. About 2,000 letters go out every year from the Division of Marine Environmental Services, so that we feel that taking that credit for 25% of that fertilizer load is a fair thing to do, because we do have a bylaw and we do enforce it, and it does prohibit certain fertilizer applications. In this case, it gives us about 200 kilograms of nitrogen as a credit. And then we've got stormwater. And in this case, we have a very significant stormwater catchment area that we identified as part of an EPA grant program a couple of years ago. They didn't choose this site, but we did extensive analysis to present the site to them. So Captain's Lane, and I'm going to show you some pictures, has a storm drain. It's a 1/4-acre site, but it's a 20-acre catchment area, and that's a big area. And when you do the calculations, and I used 40 inches of rainfall because that's in the MEP, we actually know the rainfall is higher, so there may even be more loading. There's about 120 kilograms of nitrogen going into Green Pond from this storm drain. And so I want to show you guys the catchment area goes from Captain's Lane, which is where the storm drain is, all the way up to Rosemary Lane. So it's this area all in here that presents the stormwater going right here into Green Pond. The other thing on this map to note is the star is the East Falmouth School, and they have a septic system that's producing about 35 kilograms a year of nitrogen that's going into the head of Green Pond here. And so this is Green Pond Road, and we have been thinking also about a permeable barrier there to attenuate not just the school, but some of that upper watershed load as well. So the storm dam at Captain's Lane. This is a picture. It'll be better if it were dark, but we don't have to go there. Captain's Lane, this is Captain's Lane right here. This is the storm drain that comes down, and you can see all kinds of erosion on top of the storm drain going right here into that upper third of Green Pond. This is a picture that we took at the site. So clearly this is town-owned land that's clearly available for doing some sort of a stormwater best management practice. And there's the drain. So it's a 12-inch drain, and there are a number of these in Falmouth, but in Green Pond it's absolutely an important one, as it was with Falmouth Harbor last time we looked at these storm drains. So in addition to the stormwater and the fertilizer, which all total gets us about 200 and something kilograms, we still have 4,200 kilograms to go. These are big numbers. Part of the issue with permeable barriers, so our toolbox of alternatives at this point includes looking at these permeable barriers, looking at shellfish, and looking at denitrifying septic. We're casting an even wider net, but those are such preliminary technologies that we're not really bringing them into They don't get a bullet at this point, because we're not quite there yet. But in terms of the barriers, we've already got at the upper watershed, 67% of the upper watershed load being attenuated in Mill Pond. Mill Pond is already, in some ways, sort of if you wanted to call it a constructed wetland system, we've got it already, and it's right there, which makes us want to think about, could you do that at the heads of other estuaries to have constructed wetlands doing this kind of yeoman's work? And then we've got East Falmouth Elementary with 35%, small contributions. So we're looking now at shellfish and these denitrifying septic systems and eco-toilets. And this is a picture of the current shellfish propagation that's happening in Green Pond. It is a busy boat basin. Dan brought this up before, and he's absolutely right. The 3 yellow circles are where we relay oysters now. There's also quahog propagation, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I just wanted to show you this aerial to show you where we have been and will continue to bottom plant our oysters from Little Pond. Right now, by the numbers, and I feel like we run the Little Pond project in a very, we take off a lot of metrics. We take a lot of data, and we know pretty much what we're doing. We relayed 500,000 oysters into Green Pond in 2013. In the past 2 years, we've relayed 600,000. And so by the numbers, a 3.5-inch oyster. And the reason I say 3.5-inch, Ron, I'm singing your song now. The oysters are bigger than 3 inches by the time they've gone through their depuration cycle and the water body opens. So this is recreational and commercial harvest, not taking them out at 3 inches that would be ideal from a commercial perspective, but the extra 1/2 inch, they grow exponentially and they uptake nitrogen exponentially, and as we've said, the 3.5-inch oysters that are coming out of Green Pond get you about 0.5 kilogram per oyster, or, I'm sorry, that should be a milligram, that's the one. 0.5 milligram, but yeah, that shouldn't be a kg, it should be an mg, I didn't catch that, sorry. But it's 300 kilograms total for 600,000 oysters. So that K should just be an M under the 0.5. It would be great if we got 0.5 kilogram per oyster, but they'd be like oysters that were this big. So 1 million oysters at 0.5 milligram, or gram, sorry, per oyster,
0.5 gram.
is 500 kilograms of nitrogen.
Are they all harvested, or this is what you would hope would come?
They are all harvested. What we've experienced for the past 2 years is the first year they weren't, because people weren't aware that we had this sort of pennies in a wishing well for people to go collect. But last year it was gone. And some of the older ones, the division actually manages this. So they go in at the end of the harvest. First they go in and allow the recreational harvesters and then the commercial harvesters. And then the stuff that's bigger actually is relayed to other areas. And those larger size oysters, sometimes they're as big as 3-4 inches, again get harvested recreationally and commercially. There's actually a pretty good commercial market for a 4-inch oyster, according to a couple of growers who have found markets for this. So the division, we try to get everybody to do it passively, just to kind of go out with their grants, but then the division goes in, sees what's there, and either reopens areas for a few days. But the thing about oysters is they're right there on the surface, and so people just go get them. It's no raking required, so they're very popular.
Can we ask Dan, since he's still here, a 3-inch oyster, a 3.5-inch oyster, a 4-inch oyster, what's the market for these? All? Do they increase in value, decrease in value? What do you get?
No, everybody wants a 3-inch oyster, but you can sell them. I don't know how you could possibly know that there was 600,000 oysters coming out of it.
I counted them.
I think that's important.
Believe me. We do it by weight. We go out, we watch how many, Chuck is incredibly engaged in this process. And so when the days are open for recreational harvesting, he's out there counting people in packs. The commercial guys, we look at their DM, they have to report their numbers to DMF. We also do a population, it's a good question, we do a population survey before we open the area. So we know how many we've taken out of Little Pond, and we know because we count them in the totes. We know exactly how many we bottom planted. Before we open the areas up, we do a transect, we do a population study, and we figure out what the mortality is. So we've got basically 90% survival for the past couple of years because the drills haven't found us yet, and neither has anybody else. So
90% survival in planting?
past two, in Green Pond for the past 2 years, they are there. And so then they're harvested and we count the commercial and we count the pecks from the recreational. And oddly enough, the numbers seem to be, matching up. But yeah, no, it's a big piece of work. It's part of what we do here. Because we're trying to make sure that we understand what can and cannot happen in some of these water bodies. And so, yep. And so the other thing we did is there was a benthic survey of Green Pond because, as Doug mentioned, the Coastal Ponds Committee has been very interested in Green Pond, and I guess Ron mentioned that too. So they did a benthic survey, and if you look at the benthic survey and you look at the suitable bottom, we did an estimate, and we think that easily 3 million quahogs could be planted along the ribbons, along the shore of Green Pond. So we could get 1,200 kilograms.
Susan's grant, did you mention that?
And I didn't mention it, Susan's Grant is in a closed area right now, but it is an area that we had talked about as a committee, trying to understand whether that could be another nursery, where you would, if you wanted to do oysters that you didn't have to relay from Little Pond into Green Pond, you could grow them
You might also be able just to grow them in the sites where they're planted as well. It's rather than having even to move them in floating structures over the bottom planted.
and then dump them.
And just
Yep.
spread them out there. So it's even less labor.
Or as John likes to point out, the Susan's Grant area might be a wonderful place for a reef, where we
Yeah.
have a permanent,
You want to show us where that is roughly?
roughly,
There it
about
is.
here.
Up there.
There's Green Pond
Isn't it-
Harbor Hotel,
No.
and then there's a nice little ramp that we could use, and then the Susan's Grant is up in here.
I recall Susan's grant, it used to be,
George
George
Souza,
Souza.
that was his house, that's where he lived.
and he had a shellfish grant.
He had a shellfish.
Are we sure it was a grant, or was it just his area for growing?
I'm sorry, I don't think it was,
I
yeah,
think
grant
it-
is the wrong
It was
word.
not a grant.
Yes.
I think we determined earlier, there are no grants.
Well, it's called
Nope,
Susan's
good point.
Grant.
Good point, yes,
Susan's
okay.
yard.
He was
Souza's yard.
He was the shellfish agent, and he grew shellfish, and
There was
somebody argued with him.
significant infrastructure put into that wetland area.
You've seen it.
Yeah,
Except when he wanted to put white trash.
But I don't know, it's not in such good shape now,
But he got something.
but it shouldn't be that much.
Right. Okay, so, the other thing we're looking to look at is denitrifying septic systems in the lower watershed. What would that take? So we know that the load from the lower watershed is actually 4,500 kilograms per year. This is actually an earlier version of the presentation. That's the problem here. A couple of little typos that I fixed and didn't put on here. Sorry. 4,500, I'm sorry, nope, this is right. The 4,400 kilograms, if you look at all these little dots, all these dots are houses with nitrogen. And if you look in Watershed MVP and you draw the polygon, it tells you that all of this is 4,400 kilograms. We need to remove 45 by the MEP numbers. There are 969 properties, and this area is pretty much a build-out. The average, if you take the total number of properties and the total number of load, you'll see that the average contribution per property is 4.5 kilograms of nitrogen per year, which is an interesting number to kind of have in the back of our head. So what does an average household contribute? 4.5 kilograms multiplied by 2.2, what is that, 10 pounds or something of nitrogen a year. The average lot size on the Acapesket side, is this side, is 1/2 an acre. And on the Davisville side is 1/3 of an acre, and that's important when you're thinking about denitrifying septic systems, right, John? Size of lots is important. We don't have postage stamps, and we've got some lots that are actually of a reasonable size.
You said that the school was only 35?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
No,
That's right.
it doesn't. No, we questioned that.
We did, but we
And-
decided that we went into the data spreadsheets from the Massachusetts Estuaries project, and we picked out that property, and it said 35 kilograms, so we took that number. I mean,
It's
it's
an
9 months of
MEP
the year. The MEP number from and if you look at MVP for the school, it's the same number.
Sure, but no matter what, it's not, that school is not the equivalent of 8 houses.
Right, something.
You don't get a lot of bathroom breaks.
Well,
There's a lot of little
it's
kids.
9 months out of the year, and who knows what, but, and I think they have an attenuation factor. But, and we also know some things about the septic system, that there wouldn't be nearly as much attenuation as one would expect from a septic system.
That's right.
So it's worth looking at, but
Yes.
we didn't decide to question the numbers, but we would at the next level of planning.
Right.
But if we did the math on an IA system or a denitrifying septic system, getting us 50% removal, which is 19 milligrams per liter, we would need to, and we took every single house at a new septic system that got half the nitrogen, you'd only get 2,100, 2,200 kilograms from that. If we had a septic system that removed got us down to 10 milligrams per liter, and we did every single house in the lower watershed, we'd get about 3,200, 3,300 kilograms per year. And so this was just, if you wanted to get it all, if you didn't want to have any shellfish or anything else, and you just wanted to use IAs, we couldn't do it. There's just too much nitrogen for IA systems by themselves. And so that's sort of a thumbnail look at, if we were going to take out, I'm just going back to this, 1,200 from the shellfish, and another 3,000 from 3,300 from the denitrifying systems, we could get there. And in round numbers, the fertilizer, the stormwater, captains, and the shellfish, 1,500, and then 3,000 from IA systems, denitrifying systems. And the next steps are to just put together a summary document. And at that level, I will drill into the school. For that summary document, I'll go pull out the water use records and do a calculation and make sure we've got the right number. Because it's sort of part of what we do here is we question. And then the summary document, we don't believe the wastewater treatment facility is contributed in those other watersheds.
Exactly.
That goes into our summary document so that when we do our planning, we've got it documented. Neighborhood meetings, and then reviewing for common drains. Our drowned valleys and Bacchus Brook and Mill Pond having a really significant impact that we ought to try to apply to other places.
Thank you, as usual. Comments or questions from the committee? Ron?
Yeah, I have a number. Thanks, yeah, that was great. So we're back to a half a gram of nitrogen per oyster for bottom planting.
We're not. We're at a half a gram, 0.5 grams,
Yeah.
when we know that they're going in and coming out at that larger size. And in Green Pond, we just happen to know that they come out at that larger size.
Right. Well,
That's why I used that number
I
there.
think West Falmouth Harbor, because all of my samples they were at least, they were 3.5 to 4.5 inches. Some of them were huge, but anyway, it's just, the bottom planting is different from growing in bags anyway.
Really
so it's a
different,
different.
yep, absolutely.
And not only that, but also in terms of probably the nitrogen concentration may be higher. There should maybe more shell. There could be a little bit more from different things. Just a few points. Just on the flow rates, you showed the slide of the flow rates and the contributions from Bacchus Brook, Coonamessett River, and Bournes Brook. If you look at what nitrogen concentration was assumed in that flow, and then I assume you just multiply that times volume going through. Coonamessett River has a large volume. Bournes Brook may have small. Bournes and Bacchus Brooks would be less, and therefore those are just factors that I think need to be looked at a little bit more. And if I remember a paper by Ivan Valiella correctly, and the freshwater ponds as denitrifiers. The water generally passes through the pond bottom, which is anoxic, and you get denitrification. It goes in the pond, partial denitrification, then it passes through again. On the other side is that groundwater flows on Cape Cod through these ponds. And so with the Mill Pond example, we have a slightly different situation because we have a dam and a flow. There's like a flow through it. It doesn't go through, all go through the bottom. So attributing that much to I just don't know about Mill Pond, if it functions like a classic pothole or pond on Cape Cod kind of thing.
Well, the numbers are empirically derived in the MEP report, right? They have tide gauges and they do the nitrogen sampling every month for a year.
Right.
So
I didn't know
now-
what the concentrations were or what the flow rates were, because
They're
it
in
could
the-
be, Coonamessett River's obviously much
Different.
more significant in that it's got a huge watershed and also collecting all over Coonamessett Pond.
Right.
So I think that's just something to explore a bit. Also, I'll say this until I'm still, so long as I'm conscious, and as so long as during the daytime comes. But I mean.
While you still
that-
have breath,
that-
you'll be
that
saying.
when you read the MVP reports, they talk about the time that there's a problem in these estuaries is in the summer, because we get these phytoplankton blooms. We still have nitrogen entering steadily through the year. Well, maybe not exactly steadily, but it creeps in. There might be waves of it coming in through the year, but a lot of that, because of the freshwater flowing alone, ends up flowing right out during the winter months. And that fraction, I still think we need to examine it. The MEP report supports the point that the winter load is not a concern. And in Little Pond and Coonamessett, Little Pond, Great Pond, there's a turnover rate based on freshwater inflow about once a month from rain, groundwater, and the tributaries. So that means that really what we need to deal with is not the full year's load, but likely a fraction of that, maybe half, depending on the turnover rate, or 50%. Half or 50%, no, 40 to 50% basically, maybe all that's needed to be addressed, because in the winter it's of no consequence. It may it goes out, just like inlet widening, it's the same idea. We're dumping nitrogen out more, presumably through the widening of the inlet. So I think that will become more and more of a factor as we examine these things and look at where the problem is and how to go at it a little bit more surgically. And it may not take all that many oysters to deal with the issue, or anything, except, in terms of that flow. Sewers deal with all of it, 24/7, year-round. But shellfish really only work in the summer, because they're cold in the winter like everything else. So it may be that we can do a lot more with shellfish, and the monitoring programs will be able to show that ultimately as we move toward full-scale test or larger-scale tests in these aspects. Also, there are the new groundwater studies that are showing lower loading rates in the lower parts of the estuaries from the MBL studies, as well as the MTER actual data collection of nitrogen concentration rather than model predictions. So that will become more and more evident. Then the last point is on the 4.5 kilograms per house. Normally it's considered that about 4.5 kilograms per person is what we each contribute to the environment per year. As it goes through the septic system.
What? It's not 4.5.
2.5.
2.5.
No, I'm saying it comes out of us, not what, there's attenuation after it leaves the septic, goes through the ground. There is attenuation in the ground, and that might be closer to what you're saying, John, it's 2.5. But that 2.5 though would work out pretty well, except we have like 2.23 people per house around here. But if it's that, then it's closer to whatever that number comes to, which is higher than I'm just saying we need to cross-check some of this to be sure that 4.5 that they're using is consistent with the plan. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it. I don't understand different figures as you try to squeeze them through a round peg through a square hole kind of it.
So what's interesting about that number, I mean, frankly, is that it was, so the MVP uses water use records from 2010, 11, and 12, and it averages it. So they're updated water use records. And they attribute it parcel by parcel. So when I do the polygon and I get the total mass coming from that area, and then they give me a parcel count because it's all GIS based, that's basically saying the updated water use numbers and the updated parcel numbers. So it's pretty, so the MEP is based on 2003 water use records, and that could be where some of the discrepancy is.
So are they assuming greater nitrogen attenuation then? before it,
No, greater attenuation, same attenuation factor, same 90% by
so the
irrigation.
20,
But you're right, we do need to get into the,
26.25 that is then cut down by 90, because 90% of the water
that's right.
comes through, right? So it's down to 23. Coming out is what MVP was using as well, or is that?
Yep, and then they use water use numbers that are different, because that's a concentration, and you gotta use it by how much water
Yeah,
you use per
this is
house.
starting to look
But it
like
gets very
a
detailed.
debate, and it might
It's not a debate,
be
I'm
more
just trying, I'm
profitable
just
to
No, no,
pursue
no,
it
we're just-
offline later on.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just,
Any
yeah,
other
well,
points to
the
be
thing
made
is,
here?
it would be, yeah, some of this would be good if we'd have this ahead of time, we usually do get them ahead of time.
Didn't we have this ahead of time?
We didn't, I don't usually do the presentations
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
Haven't
Okay.
in the past.
But, it would- yeah, but anyway, it's the
Okay.
last one, so I
Fair.
mean, you know.
Well, then, look
Fair
what day's
enough.
coming, don't
Oh,
worry.
okay.
Right, and so I just prepare a summary document, so we're actually waiting for a summary document on this and also on
Falmouth.
Falmouth and our harbor. Right.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any other comments or questions from the public? Dan had something in the midst there, and
No,
John
it
was,
was just echoing Ron's comments on the grams of nitrogen per oyster.
Yeah.
Should I go back up there?
sure, why not?
You know, I've been doing this nitrogen shellfish work for a while now, and I thought it was accepted across the scientific literature as 0.16 grams of nitrogen per 3-inch oyster. Recently, I've seen 0.2, so that's what I use in my presentation. I've never seen 0.5, so I just think that, you know, using those numbers, you know, if you're talking about 0.2 versus 0.5, that's double the number of shell, you know, so
Right.
just ironing that out is important. You know?
Yeah.
Well, but there's a couple, one is that the county has done a lot of analytical work of cultured oysters, and they come up with 0.26.
Right.
And that's what we've been using. But then there's the denitrification side of it, which we don't use yet, okay? But SMAST has done 2 years of that now, analysis. And last year, it was quite large. This year seemed a bit lower in Little Pond from floating systems. So we'll see. We don't have their report yet. But anyway, that's good.
Mr. Brown?
That's an interesting question. Doug Brown. So is SMAS now sharing their data that was proprietary previously? I had been to ask that previously, and you reminded me.
Like SMAST is, yes, they give us data,
Okay.
but they don't share the model for the MEP analyses.
Right.
Okay, these are different data points that they're giving us, which is actual measurements. It's not the black box model that we can't seem to.
Right, well, as long as you get the data, that's
Yeah.
good. So another question, is anybody thinking about the condition of the culvert at Mill Pond connecting to the brook? Because there's a lot of, there's been a lot of talk at East Falmouth Village Association meetings. People are concerned about like the stagnant nature of Mill Pond, although it seems funny that it seems to be attenuating nitrogen effectively. But it seems like there's very little flow. And I tried to get at the culvert to see for myself, and I was unable to with the thicket and the brush, and I don't have a pair of waders to get out there. So I'm wondering if someone could look into that, because there's a suspicion that it may be really collapsed. Because there's very little fish in the pond, and you don't see any flow coming out of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Well, that would mean there'd be more nitrogen removed.
that's right. Better retention
The
time.
fail, no, because it has to go through the perimeter of the pond.
At the
you know.
expense of
Yeah.
a little attenuation, we'd like to bring some fish in.
We have lots of waders. We have lots of waders, so we can go take a look at
All right,
that.
Virginia?
If I can make a couple of comments. Mill Pond in the last couple of years, and particularly this last summer, has become to be quite overgrown. You have to remember that freshwater ponds are phosphorus limited, not nitrogen limited. And the phosphorus has to come from the septic systems, so that if you drive along the pond, there's been quite a bit of development, which I think is affecting the health of the pond. You have to remember that the MEP took its data in 2003, 2004, somewhere, you know, more than a decade ago. And so ultimately, there probably will have to be some reexamination of information that we are currently using sort of as our baseline, as a starting point. That's the first point. The second is that that culvert is So it's not set at the bottom of the pond, but it's not set at the top of the pond either. And so there is flow out of it. I have looked at it, just standing on the sidewalk and looking down into it. But I agree, it's very brushy. So it's a little hard to tell whether it might be partially blocked. And so I think that's a good request. It is a state culvert, but might be able to get town forces to take a look.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any comments or questions from the public? Thank you.
Yes, very interesting discussion. Thank you,
Right.
thank you all.
I believe we have to get out at 4:30 because the Board of Appeals wants to come in. So we have report of members and staff, and we have review of minutes, and we have things to do in half an hour, so if you could
Be quick.
be quick. Thank you. Okay, report of members and staff. Echo Toilet meeting.
There was a confab of eco-toilet people at the Unitarian Universalist Church. Wynn was there. He says hi to everyone. Great presentation. And the group basically talked about successes and failures and how the Rich Earth Institute is actually doing a great job using fertilizer coming from urine and kind of their project. George Heufelder was there as well, and he's working on the final report for us. So that's my report. It was a good meeting, and it happened last Sunday.
Great. Comments or questions? Next item.
About 30 people were there.
30.
Well attended.
Okay. USGS monitoring Mira Vista Peninsula.
See ya.
Oh, right, me again. I was just going to try to write some notes here. The USGS is interested in working with, Ken Foreman was here several weeks ago or months ago to talk about his project with his students. He's with the MBL to put some push wells in to try to get groundwater information. He gave us some preliminary data. And the USGS is also interested. Apparently, we're creating a very interesting experiment by sewering around Little Pond. And so people want to understand better what is happening to the groundwater. And USGS has started by wanting to put in some tide gauges, right?
Right.
And they were given administrative approval to install 2 tide gauges, one in Little Pond and one in Great Pond about midway. They're going to put them in a way that they obviously they don't move. And it's an idea to understand as sewering happens, what is happening to the height of those 2 ponds, or Little Pond and Great Pond, and how they might be changing because of the less amount of water coming in. Because when you're sewering, that water's not going into the groundwater system anymore. You know what I mean? So instead of going into the ground, it's going up to the wastewater treatment facility. So they're very interested in understanding how the hydrodynamics are going to change of the groundwater. And they got some money to do that, and our Dennis LeBlanc is involved, and his staff person, who I don't remember, Tim McCobb, are very interested in also putting wells in the ground. And I think they picked a location that's about midway, Little Pond, a little bit north on Maple Street, along Maple Street, to try to understand groundwater flow as well. And they're going to be watching that to see what the sewers are doing.
Comments or questions?
I'm just wondering, just as you pointed out, Sia, if we're looking at the groundwater changes to Little Pond and Great Pond from the sewering, they might be interested in looking at the impacts to Crocker Pond and downstream Herring Brook, for example, from moving the water over to that side and seeing what the impact is. I don't know, in a dialogue with them, it just might be something to mention that we'd be interested, since we're changing hydraulics of.
You mean the additional flow that would be going?
Yeah, the additional flow.
Yeah,
We should bring it
as
up.
opposed to less, it's more there.
Right.
So
Okay,
it's just
gotcha.
to see what the impact might be.
Yeah. I do want to say that modeling was done when they were evaluating Site 7. It's called mounding. And when you discharge to a sand filter bed, they look at localized mounding, and then they look at the topography in the area to make sure that the localized mounding would not in any way affect a vernal pool or anything.
But that's modeling again.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I see your point, all right.
Right, which is, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Just quickly,
Yeah.
you mentioned that they're monitoring groundwater flow dynamics. Are they measuring nitrogen in those wells
Yes,
also?
they're
Okay.
gonna measure nitrogen concentrations, yep.
Okay, status of Bourne's Pond NPC.
Okay, the document that this committee approved and recommended to the selectmen was approved by them. It was submitted before February 1st. It will be in the Monitor, which makes it its official status on February 10th. There will be about a month of public comment, and then there will be a 2-week period when the staff writes the decision. And so we should have that in early April. I have something under other.
I
Okay.
guessed.
Passing this down, there should be 3 there.
Oh.
This was a very lengthy article written by our local Sam Houghton that appeared in the Mashpee Enterprise last week it's just a beautiful summary of what Mashpee is doing. And I was interested in it for regarding wastewater. I was interested in it for 2 reasons. One is that they seem to be following a path similar to what Falmouth did, of working parallel, doing some sewering where it made sense, and then clearly looking at alternatives, and particularly shellfish. So they have set out a 5-year plan for $37 million, and they spell out on page 2 of this article what they're going to be spending and where those millions are going related to sewer design. I'm particularly interested in $24 million that is allocated in fiscal 19 and 20 to the Mashpee River watershed. And my second reason for bringing it up is that's part of the Walkway watershed. And so we, in making our plans for the Walkway watershed, need to know what Mashpee is doing with their piece of that watershed. So they clearly have it on their radar screen, and we need to incorporate that information into our study of Walkway when we get to it.
Okay. Comments and questions? Any other reports of members and staff? Okay. Review and vote on minutes of January 14th and January 21st.
Oh, yeah, I just have one report, which is I will have a report next week on the town meeting article.
All right, this would be, well, next week.
Actually, next meeting, sorry.
Yeah, I think the next meeting in real life is going to be March 3rd. Well, we should talk about scheduling, actually, because
okay.
there's a school vacation week in, our next scheduled meeting would normally be the 18th. That is a school vacation week. I won't be around, and I don't know if you want to
I better talk about it today then.
no, it's not on the agenda today.
I know, but it's not well, I'm not asking for anything. It's just
Well, we're not going to talk about it right now. We're going to talk about scheduling. Our normally we'd be March 3rd, 17th, and 31st. 31st is just before town meeting, so I doubt we'd be wanting to meet then. So I think March 3rd and 17th would be our normal time. The question would be, do we need another meeting in February? Or can we wait until March 3rd to take up whatever needs to be taken up?
I'll be away in March.
Really?
Yeah,
March, the whole month?
March.
Wow.
I'll be away in March.
Someplace warm, I hope.
That's a good month to go away.
Warmer.
I'll also be away, school break, and the first week in March, for whatever that's worth.
Okay, so the school vacation week is no good for you either, so that's 2.
Me
So we
neither.
could do it the week after the school vacation week?
I suppose we could, and
And then,
then skip March 3rd.
But he won't be here for that one. But
Well, I
then-
said skip that one too. 'cause-
yeah,
Last week of February would work for me.
So that would be,
That would
that'll
be,
be February 25th.
exactly, yeah. All right,
Okay.
that seems reasonable.
that's good. Okay,
So
good for- that's good for me.
225
Yeah.
and then 317.
Then scratch the 3rd.
Let's scratch the 3rd. Yeah.
Good. So
You know,
we
if
won't-
some unforeseen deadline-oriented emergency comes along, we can do a special meeting, but I think February 4th, February 25th, March 17th seems like a reasonable plan. Okay, minutes. January 14th, Mrs. Weig has some alterations to recommend. Everybody received these. These were-
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look at them because they came in.
Okay, but that's all right, but the originals were
Oh.
sent out by you back on Tuesday, so everyone has seen the minutes that were sent out. Can I have a motion to adopt them, and then we can discuss it?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes of January 14th as written.
Okay. Discussion.
Well, I just had a few points, which took some clarifications on what was written. I sent them to you, Eric, and to Sia.
Okay, did the other members not get them?
No, I didn't send it to everybody.
Oh, okay.
I didn't,
That was the instruction. We should
Yeah.
send them to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
they're late, okay, I just got
Okay,
them in,
well-
but I can explain what they are.
Okay.
If we look at, there's just, well, actually, I've got one comment. Starting on the,
Which set of minutes are you looking at,
I'm
Ron?
looking at the
14th.
14th first. Yeah,
Okay,
then-
let me
then
find
There's
this.
something on the 21st, but it's minor. It just says, where it says, Ron Zweig presented shellfish proposal for consideration as an expansion demonstration project. Start with 2,000 kilograms removal by shellfish, and then it says, then I put it in comma, using 3-inch oyster nitrogen content at 0.26 grams per oyster, or 260 kilograms of nitrogen per 1 million oysters with bottom planting of 1 million per acre. Okay, that's one input, which is just what I said at the meeting. And then the next thing was bottom planting is important, it says, and I added 7 acres would be needed to annually harvest 7 million 3-inch oysters. About 3.5 million seed oysters can be produced per acre per year. This was what I said. Okay, so that's what the understanding was. So that was the change to that.
Okay,
Paragraph.
let's discuss that one, because then I get another one. But,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I said. It's what I
Well,
said.
well, I
It isn't what-
understand that's what
Yeah.
you're saying, you said. I wondered if the person who took the notes
Yeah.
agrees.
I'm looking at it.
And I have no objection to it.
I
Yeah.
think that's what he said. I'm just looking
Okay.
at stuff and, the bottom planting 7 acres would need 7 million 3-inch oysters, million per, yep, about 3.5. The only thing I'm looking at is the 3.5 million can reduce per acre per year. Did you say that, or?
I did say that.
Yeah, as long as you said, because I didn't, I think it's more like we do about,
But anyway, it's a
Yeah,
nitpicking thing. What I said and what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah.
The question
I'm-
is
I'm
what-
comfortable with
what's
that.
true, the question is
I'm
whether or not you
comfortable with
said
it, yep.
Okay, and then,
Okay, so does anyone have any other discussion on that particular piece of Ron's amendments? Okay.
okay. Then, I think, then the next thing said, it says, corrections to Zweig, and it's misspelled, Zweig is misspelled,
Okay.
so that's okay.
Okay, and you wanted it to be clarifications and not
Clarifications,
corrections?
yeah,
Well, well, what,
clarifications. Plus my name should, the I
I'm
should be
definitely
put-
gonna fix your
well, we
name.
can spell your name right. I think.
I think clarifications is fine.
Okay, and then the final thing is, you know, I did say this, which was that Eric had pointed out that DEP has not certified that oysters contain so much nitrogen. Okay, that's not what they did, they just said whatever they said about the Mashpee program. But, and then I followed up with that by saying, or for that matter, nitrogen reduction by Bourne's Pond inlet widening. So we don't, the state hasn't certified that. We assume that will be the, well, not assume, but the modeling and the estimates are that we have a figure for that. But we don't know for sure what will happen yet until we do it, which is why it's a demonstration project.
So you're saying that you said, because
I
I
said
remember
that.
I was the one that raised the question of the state
Yeah,
certified
and I
plans not
followed
being
that.
valid.
I followed that by saying something to this effect.
That
Not
nitrogen
word for
reduction
word, but, yeah.
actually doesn't apply to nitrogen, to Boyne's Pond inlet opening either, was your point, I guess.
May I make-
No, it just means that they haven't certified.
Right,
100%
Okay.
that that's the case.
Okay,
So that was what I was saying,
Okay.
yeah.
do you have any?
What I was gonna say is I'd make it a separate bullet point, and I would just
No,
say.
he was just, he's suggesting just continuing
Just
the
continue
the
it as,
sentence
yeah.
by saying, or for that
Yeah.
matter, nurture.
And if you're good with that, I'm good with that too.
I don't have any problem.
Okay, so, and then, yeah,
Are we done with the 14th?
14th done,
Then you
Okay,
have
so-
to give me just a minute to
okay.
codify this.
Well, we have to vote it.
I know,
Have to
and
vote.
you have to
Let me do
vote.
that, okay. So the motion on the floor is the minute that's presented. Ron is amending that by adding the language we all just discussed. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Ron's amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Ron's amendment wins. All in favor of the main motion? Aye.
Aye.
We're there. 21st.
I just had one thing on the 21st.
Did we spell your name right?
I don't know about that, I didn't look at that, I should have.
I usually spell your
You
name.
usually, no, you